Hey folks, and welcome to a Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The daily ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Schindler's List, directed by Steven Spielberg, Private Parts by Betty Thomas. We have newly released Till by Chinonye Chukwu, Bones and All by Luca Guadagnino, and Spirited by Sean Anders. It's going to be a great show, so stay tuned and enjoy. Mr. Vincent Daly, how we doing, buddy?
Tommy boy, how's it going?
It's going okay on my end. How was your interesting week of movies you had here?
It's a Thanksgiving plate of movies. That's the note for the week, folks.
I kind of like the array because it's all over the place.
It is really all over the place. Holiday travels. I kind of had to do what I had to do this week, but we got the 5 done. So.
I'm pretty pleased. Yeah, I'm actually pretty pleased with what you have here.
Yeah, and it was a good week of movies. This wasn't a bad week of movies.
Yeah,
so.
And again, 3. I'll tell you what, we are not dry on new releases.
No,
by any stretch of the imagination.
Not at all. If anything, we're backlogged with it.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, so true.
Yeah.
You want to get started right away?
Sure.
Okay, folks. So we are jumping back to 1993. This is a big named movie. It was winner of the Oscars for Best Picture, Best Directing, Best Writings and Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, Best Music. It was also nominated for Best Actor in a Lead Role, Best Actor in a Supporting Role, Best Costume Design, Best Sound, and Best Makeup. Cool. So it was a heavy hitter.
Heavy hitter for Spielberg.
It was based on the 1982 novel Schindler's Ark.
Yes.
It has a powerhouse cast, writing, and directing crew here.
Yeah.
Then this is Schindler's List.
Why the hell did you watch it during Thanksgiving?
Yeah, what was it on your radar for it? I'm glad we're finally covering it.
Yeah.
This was not even on our original kind of OG list, before the people knew about us. Mm-hmm. So kind of talk us through how you got here, and then talk us a little bit through us the movie.
Yeah, so folks, you might think I'm crazy for watching this film out of the blue. You might think it's crazy that we are layering it next to Howard Stern's Private Parts, but we have a very structured few weeks coming up, and exciting for that reason. We have some really good content coming out along with the releases, and it has been on my mind. Spielberg, as far as directing, he's coming out swinging with The Fabelmans, which is his crack at this mature family coming-of-age drama genre that has been, we've been covering quite a bit, honestly. He's getting his crack at it. I wanted to see what is widely considered Spielberg's best.
Yeah, it is widely considered, and that's so crazy to think because it's among so many.
Mm-hmm,
because would you say, this and, man...
Jaws. He released Jurassic Park the very same year. He did both of these films, monumental in their own right.
When you look at his decades, it's unreal.
It's wild.
And I don't think I hope we get one more great decade of him.
Yeah.
He definitely has a lot of projects coming up. He's in his mid-70s now.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that old.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah, look at his filmography. But it's crazy how long he kept it up. In my opinion, I believe he breaks the Quentin Tarantino 10 films.
Oh, yeah.
Look at Saving Private Ryan, which we covered recently.
Amazing.
Did we cover it recently?
Not on the podcast. I think going back pre-podcast or right before the podcast, I revisited Saving Private Ryan.
Okay, that's right.
But we did all the Jurassic Parks, and JP won. That's the best.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yeah, it's crazy to think that this is his best, and it very well could be. And like you said, critically, because it's just that good. And I like the idea is we'll touch this, and we will be covering Fabelmans later on, which I know people are excited for. So going back to 93, it's quite the film. And
7 Oscar wins under its belt.
I know, and 5 more nominations.
Yeah. 3 hour and 15-minute film, too. So an upward battle for me.
It's funny how Spielberg has this roller coaster, and you look at some Spielberg films, and it's like, what's going on here?
Right.
And some of the latest ones for sure.
Right, just very popcorn.
And then you have these that he just strikes it so well. And I think he gets a lot of help. I mean, the writer here is Steven Zalian. He was writer for American Gangster, Gangs of New York, The Irishman.
Wow.
He directed and wrote all of The King's Men.
Really?
So he was just,
Wow.
Powerhouse.
Powerhouse is right.
But getting into the film, and when was the last time you watched it?
Ooh, tough question.
A long time.
Yeah, probably like in high school or maybe even
it must have been
earlier.
great to sit down with this thing.
Yeah.
All right, so take us through it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it is a heavy film. Don't get me wrong. That 3 hours and 15 minutes is a lot to take in. Among the many feathers in his cap, though, this really might just be the best. And again, I think it's amazing that he released Jurassic Park in the very same year.
Doesn't make sense, yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah, how do you do that? I looked into it briefly, and I guess he was in post-production for one while he was filming the other, but yeah. And like I said, Spielberg has been on my mind as of late for him trying to tackle that family drama, that mature coming-of-age drama. So excited to see this, and he did not disappoint. I feel this movie, really deserves all of the credit it gets, and it really serves a dual role. It's an amazing film in the sense that it serves a role as a documentary and a story, which is a little bit of a theme, at least in the first 3 films we have on this podcast. But this one very specifically, it has almost an identical dual function or not identical, but almost equal dual function as documentary and story. The film is based off of the World War II biography Schindler's Ark, as we said, and that is centered on Oskar Schindler. But also, the film itself, it really aims to be a historical account of Jewish victims surrounding the story. We see this through many scenes with text explaining events, terminology, important dates, and progression of the Holocaust here. So Liam Neeson, I would say, is huge in this. I can't say what would be Liam Neeson's greatest role. This is definitely up there. Top 3 for sure.
Yeah, I don't know what else it would be other than this.
Yeah,
I always thought
Taken? No, I'm joking.
It's funny how Taken was his revival.
I guess so.
But not really.
Yeah.
I think Taken was what finally
put the coffin.
Yeah, well,
Nailed the coffin.
not pigeonholed. What's the word? It's the typecast.
Yes,
and he's
very
been ever
true.
so typecast.
He's been
which is a huge
old
shame.
action man ever since. Yeah.
Yeah, such a shame. Such a shame. But no, this is known, I think, as his greatest.
Yeah, and we see many moments that he is able to balance a complex character of Schindler. He is described as an industrialist for a reason. Oskar was a war profiteer and a very complicated character to make our protagonist. Chunks of the film highlight this rise to power and rise to riches for him, and it even flirts with a slight optimistic tone every now and again, despite the reality of what's going on around him and what he's profiteering on. However, Neeson never loses sight of that internal logic his character has, or Oskar specifically as a historical person has, for accepting the circumstances and working with the circumstances. There is much more baked into his performance than you would think. I would say constantly the harsh truth will come to light in some way for Oskar. And Neeson's acting shows subtle rationalization that a true capitalist like Oskar Schindler would make. And I think that just takes it up a notch so much for his performance. He really has this, you see it registering. You see the truth hit him and him trying to, come back with some sort of rationalization. It's just very good acting. And what it leans on is a lot of acting is reacting. A lot of acting is the subtleties of that.
Absolutely.
And I think, that's on full display here with Neeson's performance. So
His whole demeanor, I think, goes in his favor. Him as a person.
Sure.
I think he was just very good for the role.
Yeah. Absolutely. But we are introduced to the truth, and the reality, and the horror of the Jewish Holocaust in Ralph Fiennes' character, Amon Goeth. I think it's Goeth, it's pronounced. A few different pronunciations in the film, I'm guessing because, German and Polish stuff. So
Right.
I think it's Goeth. But there are a few punches, I think, held when we're looking at Oskar Schindler's character. However, there are no punches held on showing the true evil of the Nazis in this. And Ralph Fiennes plays the villain in taking this from just a historical depiction to making it a story. And I think that's the important aspect here. There are a lot of moments where this film is full-on documentary, that it kind of steps away from any kind of dramatic storytelling and is just about serving, the message and telling, the reality of the story here. When it comes to the storytelling that is done, which is a fine line here, it's in Liam Neeson's performance and Ralph Fiennes' performance, because it's very interesting. They're not good characters. If anything, they're both evil in different ways. Fiennes' character, obviously, a lot more.
Yeah.
Directly evil, but to pair these two together, you see that the message of the story is in what actions are you actually going to take in a circumstance. Both of these characters benefit from concentration camps, from internment of the Jewish population in Poland at the time. Their actions as characters are what determines the story, and we see them placed together. They even like each other. They make excuses for each other in the circumstances, and their actions are what takes it up a notch. And also, again, by adding these two characters and putting them side by side, that's where the storytelling is, apart from this documentary feel, if that makes sense.
Oh, I think that absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's good that it'd be interesting to also read the text. But I like the fact that you're dealing with these characters that are so morally gray. Now, like you said, Ralph Fiennes,
it's a straight up villain.
Right.
Right.
But it's real realistic depiction of men in general.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah.
In film, you know what I mean?
I think so, because otherwise this should just be straight on documentary. There needs to be a story told, and there is, with still filling this dual role. And I think it lies just plainly in the interactions they both have and are put together. Even without this, though, the film really does an incredible job at showing the small population, or showing at this small population of the Holocaust and what they had to go through. Like I mentioned, there are times that the film shifts almost entirely into documentary. In addition to the remarkable story of Schindler, I think I can appreciate the many real lives that this impacted. And for that reason, I don't really see there's much to criticize here. I think in my early versions of my notes here when watching this film, I was maybe criticizing how cartoonish Ralph Fiennes' acting was at times.
Okay.
But again, I think we need that to draw a line of even more villainy to, Oskar Schindler's implied villainy. There's more to it there.
Would you have liked it if it kind of backed off a little bit more of that documentary feel and really was more motion picture-esque?
I think so, but at the same time, it's not bad. It's not. It doesn't prevent me from enjoying it, and if that's what the film's going after, to be a champion for these people, I think it does a phenomenal job.
Okay.
And as that ties into Schindler's story, and folks at home, if you don't know this, I'm definitely not going to go into spoilers because of it is a wonderful film to experience for the first time. I think in part of me was going to knock this film for saying, kind of pick a lane. I either need documentary or I need storytelling.
Sure,
but
yeah.
I think some of the brilliance of it is in the juggling act of it and how much it can live in both lanes, even though the scenes that are dedicated to the documentary feel to the Jewish population of this at this time, it definitely is 100% documentary of what they went through.
Right.
That said, I think it does still add context, though it may not play directly into the story as much as I would want it to. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it does play into the story.
Yeah.
It is the story, but I feel like there's times that it's choosing one side of the coin, and more often than not, it's siding with that documentary feel. I think my preference is absolutely for more of a story focus.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that this is bad whatsoever.
Right.
And very little to criticize.
Right, and actually impressive that he balances it so well, Spielberg.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
fact that he's actually able to do that, because I could also see it being, if done poorly, a little annoying.
Yeah.
And like very much like you say, just pick a lane.
Sure. The real world aspects of this are horrific. They're very sad. So switching to that story focus, and like I said, brief optimistic tones around Neeson's performance, because from his perspective, he's on the rise. He's an industrialist. I feel like, again, sometimes in my early notes I was marking down that scenes were kind of in conflict with each other.
Sure.
But I really track a lot of it back because ultimately I was not knocking in those notes either side of what this story is about. Enjoyed both sides ultimately.
Great.
I just feel like maybe it's not that it could have been blended together a little bit more, but it is a film that juggles multiple things. Ultimately. Like I said, not a lot much more to criticize than that, and I do feel one side is stronger than the other, but making a compelling story out of this was something I love to watch, and I found myself reflecting on it a lot, of the elevated real life events. I found myself reflecting on, does the story maybe just simply piggyback off of those real life events, but at the same time, more of my notes on preference, not necessarily a criticism, and certainly a phenomenal film. We're going to go ahead and give Schindler's List an 84.
Whoa.
Big one.
A big one, but I'm shocked.
It doesn't crack 85.
Yeah.
This is where we get into like small nuances.
Okay.
Maybe it's mean-spirited that I'm not putting it in a watch list, but or a must-watch list.
Well, yeah. An 84 is still a very, very good score.
Yeah, exactly.
There's very few 84s and above that we've rated.
Yeah.
But it's just funny because you hear this picture and everyone's just, one of the best pictures ever made, one of the best pictures, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And so I feel like critics that look at it now automatically need to be in that camp. We talk about this often.
Yep.
Where because something's so praised in the very beginning, now everyone just praises it.
Bingo.
So I love that it got an 84. I'm surprised at it, but it's still a really good score.
yeah, absolutely. And that goes into just, again, I mean, it for a long time and still till today, I mean, 80s for me, definitely considered must watch and great movie territory.
Yeah.
And this hits on exactly that.
A couple sentences on just Ben Kingsley and Caroline Goodall.
Oh, Ben Kingsley was actually great in
Okay.
this. Part of that... Part of maybe twisting some of that optimistic tone back to reality with Schindler's. And who else?
Caroline Goodall plays the lead female, basically.
Not anything that I noticed, but performances were great across the board, honestly. Nothing, there's certainly not even in my proto notes was there anything like...
Anybody dragging it or liking it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nowhere near.
So let's take a big old turn.
The biggest
This is 1997, so we go from the Holocaust to Howard Stern's Private Parts.
I'm sorry for the whiplash, folks.
97. So what was the thinking behind this one? Why jump into Private Parts?
I've been wanting to watch this.
Okay.
I watched this with my brother-in-law, and I just it's been on my list forever. This was kind of also a little bit driven. I didn't get around to the film yet, but the Weird Al Yankovic story.
I like that. Yeah,
where it's like Weird Al is voicing his character. In this, though, Stern plays Stern.
Yes.
Which I think is definitely the most impressive part about this film. So
once again, based on the book, Private Parts. And you had not watched this, correct?
No, I've never seen this film.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
It's an hour and 49.
Yeah.
Like you said, all the cast are playing the cast. Howard is Howard, Robin is Robin, Fred is Fred.
Yeah.
Getting into Howard Stern's early career, and what did you think of the film?
I thought it was great. This is not a comedy from modern day, but it is a comedy that works because in every moment that you say as a watcher of this, oh, no way did this happen. No, no way was he this outrageous. Guess what? It's reinforced by having the real people there, and there's
right.
there's a realism that comes to it. Folks at home, I mean, of course, Howard Stern, I don't know if it needs an introduction, but a name synonymous with shock and self-described king of radio.
King of all media.
King of all media now. Yeah. he's upgraded it. This is a auto-bioflick focusing on his career only up until the mid-'80s, and that's a point that I'm going to return to. But like you said, Tom, starring Howard Stern, countless other real-life stars who were and still in his life, and I think it is great. It really is truly great having Stern play himself. It is 100% the secret ingredient to this whole film. The whole thing working.
Yeah, what's crazy is like how good... It sounds weird to be like, oh, he's really good at playing Howard Stern.
Yeah.
But there is, like, this is acting here.
Yeah.
And he's behind the camera very, very well.
Yeah.
Really well.
Absolutely. Even early on, when he's playing his younger self, he's like, all right, use your imagination a little bit. It's just like, all right, this is great.
Yeah. And he's funny. And he's not afraid to be the nerd. He's not afraid to be the geek in the beginning.
Yeah.
Make an ass out of himself by showing his ass.
But also, like, showing how bad he was in the beginning, too.
Yeah.
And like putting on wacky voices just for the radio, but how he takes that and he forms a new persona with it. So
the big question is, so Howard Stern, he's kind of not, I don't know if he's known for being difficult to work with, but he doesn't work with very much. Like other people or other projects, he's asked to be in movies constantly. So even with this, there was so much back and forth between this film and the production company and getting it right. That he was very seriously considered that the film was going to keep him out of it.
Oh.
And you know who was seriously talked about to replace him?
Really? Who?
Jeff Goldblum.
No way. He would have been phenomenal.
It's a real story.
He would have been so good at it.
Would have been different.
Yeah.
And would have loved it.
I think Goldblum could have done that.
It would have been it would have been probably just as good of a movie for a completely different reason.
I think so.
But
and
of course,
maybe would not hold up as well. Because again, I think the secret ingredient here is that outrageous things happen on screen, almost to the point that it feels like a raunchy early 2000s comedy. But there is a realism there, reinforced by the people being the genuine article on screen that, these are, real events.
Which is exactly what Howard said as well.
Yeah.
When he goes, if Jeff Goldblum was in it, it's just going to be a box office flop. And really, he said if he wasn't in it, it would have been a box office bomb.
Right. I'll get to some of my notes, but I couldn't shake the entire time that someone could very much read this as a self-puff piece for Howard. Someone that hated Howard Stern could watch this and be like, not revolted by like the vulgarity or the raunchiness of it, but
this guy's stroking his own ego.
Yeah, because it really is. I mean, he narrates the whole thing. It is very self-indulgent in some parts, but
I don't know. I kind of like it for that reason.
Yeah,
because it's not overly, like you said, he dips into when he wasn't very good in the beginning. Like I think it's a very honest. It's weird to say, but honest telling of just like this. Yeah. And he's got the voice. His narration is great.
Right. It helps that they're in radio. It does. They are in show business. They're not complete rookies. So. But this is, like I said, as far as the comedy, very raunchy. It is 100% a comedy, and primarily because of the real people involved. Having Robin play herself and her first reactions to Stern is key. Yeah. It shows the evolution of his collaborators like Fred Norris is key to how it all works. I also love how Fred Norris is just like in the background of every scene, like Silent Bob. Like it's awesome. I think where the comedy may not hit for some people, or maybe even specifically listeners today, is just how raunchy the film is. I think current listeners of Stern may not be familiar with how wild he was back in the 80s, because I think Stern today is even drastically different than, I don't know, pre 2008 Stern? I don't know.
Stern today is much different than even post-Sirius.
Yeah.
From 10 years ago, he's way different than what he is today.
Yeah. More interview focused, less about the bits.
Even his content and how he tried to, he's very much went through a big character change, purposely too. I mean, everything he does is extremely calculated, but trying to reach a new audience.
Sure.
And we don't have to get, I have my own opinions on Howard and his previous maybe 20 years and everything like that. But overall, different image. 110%.
Yeah, and I bring it up specifically, not for the rabbit hole of his evolution.
Sure.
I bring it up more so specifically that if you somehow haven't seen Private Parts and you are a current Stern listener, this may not be the Stern realistically.
Big time.
And I feel it was something to note. I have some music notes this week, but this one was a big one because I think it is a perfect example of Forrest Gump syndrome. It is very much just taking the most popular hits of the time period and playing the most popular song as kind of a cheap world-building attempt. I am going to give it a pass, though, and I know this is ridiculous that I knock it as this syndrome. I still haven't covered Forrest Gump, so we'll get to it one day, unfortunately. But it is about radio, so there is kind of an in-world explanation to, well, the radio wouldn't be playing deep-cut hits. They would be playing the most popular hits. So it does kind of make sense into it. And I got to say, I really do love the radio sequences. If anything, especially the early days that he's not on his game yet.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what I love about kind of a Good Morning Vietnam. I like seeing radio done. I like seeing the inner workings of it.
Oh, that's a great point.
Calling the producer. Also, thanks for the show of seeing how Robin is in a separate booth, and I guess they still keep up with that today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, big time.
Little things like that. And I think there's a lot of identity to the show, so or his show that he creates. So it is a very interesting radio movie because, I mean, Stern is probably the most controversial character. So seeing people lose their lid, primarily Paul Giamatti, who is rage incarnate.
Can we talk about Paul Giamatti?
Can we stop being around the bush and talk about Giamatti? He's wonderful in this.
He is so
good.
Unbelievable.
He's so good.
You can see where his character of 12 Years a Slave is. I mean, all of his just classic bad, crazy moments in film. He's so good.
Yeah, he's great. He's really great in this. I would say he's definitely the highlight among the performances because I don't know, everyone else is just real people, pretty much. Right. I mean, there are actors, of course, but there are a surprising amount of roles are just people in Howard's life. I also loved the transition in chapters. We have these scenes showing 1997 Howard Stern show and collaborators of 97. You could look at this and be watching the film and chalk it up and say, all right, it kind of shows, what the current day Stern show maybe is about in these chapter segments. But I really loved it because there was a very intentional switch up in camera style. It switches to like this messy digital hand cam look because obviously they're, it's about filming on the streets of New York and whatnot, and getting crazy personalities. And I just loved that the chapter marks were visually different. A minor note, probably for some, it was a big note for me though, because not only did we get a peek into, well, this is where the Stern show is now, or at the time of making the film, but we also, there was a visual difference. There was a visual language difference with that, which I just really enjoyed. I thought there were cool creative decision there. And man, what a weird artifact of Stern's life. This is pre-divorce. This is pre-satellite.
Yeah, I can't help, when I really think of it, I can't help but think at the end of his career, we will get a second film from here, capping the second iteration of kind of his life.
I think it's a shame he didn't maybe just wait a little bit longer, because I feel like even the arc of the film, having satellite radio be the end destination, would have been a perfect cherry on top, honestly.
Yes. Now, you have to think when he came back, it was the cherry on top, because he was the number one guy, yada, yada, yada. Now, had he waited 10 years, because I think he came to Sirius in 2008.
Yes.
So it is another 10 years he would have had to wait.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I do agree where now it seems like there's so much lacking from the story.
Yeah.
That we're almost waiting for a part 2, Private Parts.
Yeah.
Although it would be much more boring, I think.
Yeah, and just how much, how much it also depends on the story of his marriage, and then the reality of that is that it ends in divorce, I think maybe 2 or 3 years later.
Right.
Again, it's just, I couldn't help but see this as an artifact of Stern's life. Man, let me tell you, maybe it's just, don't write your own biography until you're on your deathbed, I guess. But yeah, interesting for a lot of different reasons. I'll end with this. Like I said, I think this could very well be seen as a puff piece. People that hate Stern could criticize it for that reason, and he's very self-congratulatory in this, but that's also Stern. Yeah. The comedy, by the nature of Stern, again, is not a comedy that will be looked on favorably in today's culture. But that really is the reason why I loved how many real people were in this film, because like I said in the beginning, you see something ridiculous, you say, no way did that happen. This is just trying to be as outrageous as possible. And guess what? You then realize this actually did happen by the many real people on the set, and kind of reinforcing the story. So I don't think it's a good comedy watch because of the outrage, because of the raunchiness. It's a good comedy because of the unbelievable career that Stern had and the people around him that stuck with him. We're going to go ahead and give Private Parts a 72.
Ooh, well, okay, 72.
Yeah. And believe me, I shaking in my boots a little bit because, again, this will not fly on a lot of, current comedy or anything like that.
Yeah, but who cares? It's a great comedy. I have a Tommy Two Shoes for this.
Wow.
I've seen it. I haven't. I've
a bunch.
I've seen it a handful of times.
You are a Stern fan. So.
At one point, I was.
Okay.
Yeah, at one point, I was. I was listening to Stern pretty good, but not so much for a number of years now.
Sure.
So I would say I love the pacing of the film.
Okay.
First of all, it is funny. I think the acting is great.
Yeah.
Which is funny to say. It's almost like a no duh, but at the same time, it's like,
yeah.
I don't know. It works. It works more than you think it would.
And even like Robin and like supporting, if you will.
Very,
good. Yeah.
I'll tell you one. Just when the cameras are on and not just the mics, they just do a good job. Everyone does a really nice job. The pacing is really good, and there's not much I would say needs to be cut. So, for instance, when you look at Massive Weight of Unbearable Talent, which was the Nick Cage movie, about Nick Cage, but not about Nick Cage. And there were elements that I absolutely loved, and I gave that 2 shoes, no laces. But there was fat to trim. There seemed like there was areas that could have been much more funnier, but they just kind of dropped off the table.
Sure.
This didn't have that.
Yeah.
It's fun, whether you're the biggest Stern fan or not, it is a good story. It's done well. It is comedy.
Yeah.
The pacing is great. I like the writing as well with the acting. So I give it 2 shoes, one of them tied.
Wow, one of
the
them
laces
tied.
Yeah.
Wow. Excellent. I love that.
Yeah, I just thought it was good. I thought it was tight, good little comedy, and it's something that people shouldn't sleep on,
Yeah. I'm concerned with someone that doesn't know Stern at all walking into this, doesn't know the legacy of Stern.
Yeah, but that's your fault.
Yeah.
If you don't,
viewer's fault.
If you don't know what the deal is a little bit.
All right,
I mean,
fair enough.
Howard Stern should have a name for being...
He's naked on the cover, so I guess, you kind of know what's up.
I think it's fine. I think people, generally speaking, if they're going to approach this at all, have some sort of idea of Howard Stern.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
And I would say this much. I mean, Stern fans, if you haven't seen it, I think this is a must-watch because, I mean, it's not more Stern. You know what I mean? It is 100% him.
And there's not that many radio films out there.
Very true. And why I think I even noted it, it's something I enjoy in Good Morning Vietnam. I like radio.
What would be top 5? What would be an essential radio film? Good Morning Vietnam and this?
It's Private Parts.
Okay, so that's 72 for Private Parts, Finn. Pretty damn good score there.
Yep.
Folks at home, we want to remind everybody, we're going on the value for value model. So you find in this valuable, you find in the site valuable. If you could, you go to thedailyratings.com, you go to the donations tab, and through monetary support, you can send whatever amount that you want, and it's based on your value that you're getting. Send it a note along with it, too, and we'll read it here on air. It's just a way for this to kind of keep on going as the listenership goes up and people start donating more and more. It's how Vin and I are going to keep this going. We don't want to throw ads in your face. We don't want to be sellouts and just shilling products to you.
Oh, they would shut down this watch week as well. They say, what? Private Parts between Till and Schindler's? What are you doing? We can do what we want now.
And we don't do a tier system either. You know what I mean? We're not going to give you some, and if you give us more money, you get a little bit more. Everybody is on their own financials. And you know what I mean? So any little bit that you have or want to give or finding valuable, just send it our way through thedailyratings.com. We appreciate it so much, and we're excited to grow this with you and just have a great product to you and more value coming your way in the future. So we thank you all for that. Okay, so going from Private Parts to...
Back to the heavy.
To another heavy film... I can't even make a joke about it.
Honestly, yeah, we shouldn't even joke.
So we're in the newly released now, and this came out. The release of this is a little weird. You can still find it in very select theaters. Maybe it'll be on digital release soon. This film is called Till. and it's following the family and specifically the mother of Emmett Till.
Yes.
And Vin, if we can get into this a little bit of just the story and what exactly within this 2 hour and 10 minutes are we covering?
Sure. And I think that's in the execution of this film. Why I'm so positive on it is that it doesn't really go the way that you think it's going to go. And nonetheless, I'll say this again towards the end, it really has a laser focus. I mean, this film did not waver in tone once, and that was just so refreshing, where so much in the modern film landscape is about shoving in inappropriate comedy or some agenda or anything like that. I mean, this film did not waver on anything of its tone. So
the seriousness.
But also the story it was trying to tell, which was more about the motherhood here.
Like what it's like to be the mom of a person like Emmett Till. And for those of you listening, just in case, I mean, everyone probably knows the story, but just reminded, Emmett Till, horrible. He was wrongfully accused of a crime and was just brutally lynched, basically. It was not that long ago. It was in the 50s, correct?
55. Yeah. You're a 14-year-old boy, a tough view on, I believe it was Mississippi specifically, of how kind of the Jim Crow era racism of the South created a different world for people of color. It's a tough story because I think in lesser hands, this could have easily been about just the boy. It shows that he has a big personality, shows how that big personality gets him into trouble. And then the finale is, obviously the horrible crimes. Instead, we are focusing on the mother, Mamie. And I think it is a brilliant way to go about this because instead of any sort of even slight glorification or highlighting, in a kind of a story arc way, building up to that moment. It's about what's happening after it and how she takes that into activism and how she deals with it as a grieving mother. So.
Yeah, so when does it exactly pick up? Do we get just a quick synopsis almost of what happened?
No, it is in the film. Okay. I would say 40 minutes in, we're finally done with what maybe the outsider knowledge or audience knowledge would be of the events.
Okay, gotcha.
And once again, I mean, these first three films kind of fit into a mixed documentary slot as well because of just how much they're trying to aim after accuracy and reality to the story. So
it's a heavy film for 2 hours and 10 minutes.
It is. Well, at least it's not 3:15 like Schindler's List.
Very true,
it's got an advantage there. Danielle Deadwyler was honestly a powerhouse in this. Not only was she able to bring the weight of a grieving mother, but then in a tasteful way, switching that drive into creating a story about her activism. This is what I mean by does not waver in tone. It's not all of a sudden she's going on a vendetta for her son. This is not driven by anything other than her wanting justice for her son. The tone here and the message of the story is really all about her motherhood and what she has to go through in that motherhood. And I thought it was phenomenal for that reason. Like I said, Till's mother, Mamie, she has her own story to tell, and I think it is a heartful perspective to take for the film. Yeah. The kid actor, Jalen Hall, plays Emmett Till, and believe me, he does a good job in the short time he's on screen, but I think focusing on him would be a big mistake for many reasons. More focus on a child actor, I think, would make this whole experience a little bit weaker.
Yeah, I'm sure,
especially for reportedly or allegedly the big personality that Till was. He's kind of in ways intentionally grating, and that kind of what gets him into trouble in the first place. Again, I just think you put this from the kid's perspective. Yeah, it can do it justice. Yes, it can do the story justice. I think it becomes a lot more predictable, us knowing the destination and us focusing on the child or the victim around here. And instead, let's switch the focus. Let's tell a story that we may not know as an audience. And I think that was a wonderful perspective to take on this motherhood, if that makes sense.
No, I think definitely because the whole point of this is Till the mom, the mom. So I think it's important to not. It's weird to say not shed so much light on the actual events because if you're trying to tell this aftermath story and what it's like to be a mother in this position, I think it's important to almost again, it's weird to say put to the side.
Sure.
But it's what needs to be done if this story needs to be told.
Yeah.
And there is so much aftermath that happens. And even like the Till case got reopened in the early 2000s.
Yes,
like
I believe
a whole new like dump of information about it, thanks to like reporting and everything like that. And so there's a big story to be told after the events of Emmett. So, but for that 45 minutes that he's in it, he plays the character well.
He does, but really, it is 45 minutes is even too generous to that perspective. It is all about the mother, honestly, 100%. So, and unlike again, not knocking the child actor, I think he does a good job for the short time he's on the screen. Deadweiler, as an actress, is fully capable of holding the focus for this, and again, this motherhood focus is a great dramatic element and telling kind of a story that it's not like if it was focused on the kid, we couldn't get behind it as an audience, but I think there's a much more empathetic tone that is there by leading through motherhood that almost everyone can get choked up over or really again lean into the empathy of the story. I think this is absolute Oscar nod territory for Best Actress, and may just be a front runner among Blanchett and De Armas for what that's worth. So I'll be very curious to see what that is. Because speaking frankly, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, not always something I pay a huge amount of attention to, but I think we have some exciting frontrunners this year. I actually love the licensed soundtrack. Believe it or not, I there's a lot of deep cut blues and rock, and I was very impressed with the selection here. There's also some care in the slight nuances of the style of music we hear, depending if we're in Chicago versus Mississippi, and I thought that was again a nice choice, a nice follow through. There was much more care put into it than just, okay, we're in 55, what kind of music are we hearing on the radio? That's our world building. No, there was much more care put into specifically where our characters
location based.
Yeah, exactly.
So I always like that too, because I'm a big fan of like old blues, as you know,
of course,
like 30s, 40s, 50s blues. And it's incredible how different it is from Louisiana to Texas to Memphis and Chicago, and it's nice to hear that.
Yeah,
it's cool that they take that care and consideration.
Absolutely,
because there are differences. Not saying that, I don't know, was it period pieces being played, or was it more Southern bluesy type music or transitional, or what kind of was it?
I think it was more so just showing a difference, just how in the mentality of these characters there is a difference in how they see racial inequality.
Right,
it's baked into the music.
Choices themselves. I'm talking about like the songs themselves. Were they of the time?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay, that's what I was asking. All right,
but still showing the differences and how the different styles of blues, the different styles of rock and roll, and again that plays into the kind of overarching message is that the Jim Crow era, it plays into a different world entirely. And there's a lot of emphasis in this film of when she travels down south, it is like entering into a new reality. Just good follow through, you know, not for nothing. It was something that I noted, and again, I kind of honed in on. So this film is a class act, though, and really handled flawlessly. I mean, flawlessly. It did not waver once in tone. Nothing was in poor taste, and laser focus is really where I kind of come into this. I kind of flip-flopped watching this. At first, I felt that the grieving was too much for the film, but halfway in, I still didn't see how Deadweiler, needs to use her son for a drive for activism, but by the end, I found myself missing how personal that sadness was, and how personal of a story of motherhood this film was, and the wonderful acting brought to the story to incorporate motherhood into the tragedy, and again on Deadweiler's shoulders. Much like other two films this week, this film has a dual role as a documentary, but Till's mother story is what takes this up a notch, and definitely into a great movie. We're going to go ahead and give Till an 80 on the dot.
Oh wow, 80.
Oh yeah, this was very good.
Wow, that's a very good score, Vin.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you liked it so much. And is it weird to say, just because of what's happening today in media landscape and everything like that, was it trying to play on a lot of current strife, or
honestly, no.
Okay,
and that's where I say
I would want it to be period
exactly.
and time of, and yeah.
If only for the respect to Emmett Till. And that's what I mean. It did not waver once. There was nothing handled in poor taste, and that I was just so refreshed by that.
Right, because the story itself is message enough.
Exactly.
It doesn't need to be extra, bringing in current events of any type, or those one-liners or comments or things like that. That's good. That's definitely good.
You know, it is about telling the story at the time, and what Mamie Till did as a result of that, and it really is her story equally.
Okay. All right, Vince. So that is Till with an 80%. Very good score.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And believe
good surprise. And you managed to see this in theaters, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, it has a very weird release.
This was technically like early October in some limited release, but then
then it blew up not blow up in theaters, but then it was in a decent amount of theaters late October into November, and it's still around. It's just a little bit more difficult, or might be that weird showing or something like that. But Till, give it a watch. Okay, so now we'll go from mother grieving to love and weird. This is Bones and All.
Emo love film.
Bones and All. This is directed by someone that we've been with before. This is Luca Guadagnino. And what do we get with this romance kind of coming of age love story? Our boy Timmy Chalamet is in it.
Yes, very teen focused. This was a lot of teens on Friday night dates.
Which right off the bat, when I saw this film, I almost talk about typecasting. He's getting into a lot of these roles, and I think he should come out of it soon.
Well, I mean, people want to see him in that. He definitely represents the craze right now, the sad skinny nicotine boy, which is so hot right now. But this is what it is.
So what do we get on this 2 hour and 11 journey here?
Yes, yeah. I love that you got all the runtimes dialed in. We set it off high with 3 hours and 15. So, but yeah, Guadagnino, a director that we've covered recent history. He did the remake for Suspiria in 2018, and then on the podcast we covered "Call Me by Your Name" for Timothy Chalamet himself.
Timmy boy, yep.
Yeah, Timmy boy. My initial thoughts and feelings on this, it kind of reminded me of Lost Boys for some reason. I think I definitely, I don't have a great reason after seeing the film of that, but I still kind of feel the same in the sense that it's like this alt horror, if you will.
Okay.
Alt,
yeah, okay.
I don't know, coming of age. And certainly Pretty Boy Timmy Chalamet adds to that draw for a teen audience. I didn't have any experience with Taylor Russell, but she had a similar vibe and drawing in a very young crowd to the theater. But I'm here for it all, folks. And Bones and All is a sad romance thriller. Each of those three words really have equal real estate in this film, and it's an interesting juggling act. We follow Russell. She is a teen girl forced to pick up and leave her life behind many times. The reason? A mysterious hunger and a dark quirk in her mind that leads to a very grim desire. Where the story opens up is when she finds out she's not alone, nowhere close, actually. And along her exploration, we meet many new faces, some safe and others to steer clear from. And that's where we kind of get, again, this melancholy, very sad, I don't want to overuse coming of age, but it is
kind of
romance.
That, though. Yeah. Was she sending off like Zendaya vibes?
Maybe. She's younger, though. I think by a good couple of years, though. She was in, I believe, Waves, which I never saw, but apparently a good film.
Okay. So how is Chalamet's and Taylor Russell's kind of connection on screen? Do they vibe well?
I think they do. I think they are in the right vibe for the entire film, which is sad, which is melancholy, and the film doesn't really try to do anything else. But yeah, I think they do vibe well together. It's just it's a very twisted story, and I think the few comforts we have in this story is when they're both on screen. Okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it a weird? How does this balancing act then go between this weird and uncomfortable to kind of this love romance? Like, what is it? Is it flirting poorly with everything, or
it's driven by stress. It's driven by shame too. I would say a lot of the depressing elements are based around shame, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But yeah, I mean, this coming of age story structure, it's Marin finding out about herself and finding how others deal with this hunger. So it's also a big focus in coming to terms with how you have any sort of life, no less ethical or not. It's about finding out how to survive a little bit. And there's always this kind of underline of self-hatred that the characters have that the tone lives in. The film's tone definitely lives in this moody, rooted depression and shame. And for that reason, don't get me wrong, a very slow film. A little bit longer than it should be.
Yeah, 2 hours and 10 sounds like a long film for something like this.
Just for this.
Like an hour and 45 probably or something.
Yeah. You know, I really enjoyed a lot of the style here. For instance, I enjoyed the retro feel to the film. It takes place in the 80s, but not like a neon-soaked 80s. It's like small town vibe.
Okay.
You feel it in the minimal but select soundtrack. Joy Division is among the licensed music. None other than Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross do the score. So, you know, their roots from Nine Inch Nails playing into this kind of moodiness here. The costume wardrobe, actually a highlight. Not something
That's what I was going to say. Did it pull off the 80s pretty well?
Yeah, and
like small time.
Specifically, it's like Salvation Army chic. Everyone looks like a junkie, and it's good because it sells this idea that they're kind of on the fringes of society and they're forced into those fringes of society.
Okay.
I find myself always appreciating the world building that Guadagnino does, and this was the same highlight going back to Call Me by Your Name as well. That I loved the academic kind of setting of.
Oh,
that.
yes, you did. That's right. Yeah.
So here, very similarly, there's a lot of care put into that world building, but unfortunately, just a good bit too slow. It's a little bit way too long, actually, and it's a lot because. You know, I mean, there are just things in the second act that should have happened in the second act, and then there are things in the last minutes of the film that should have been in the second act. Like,
oh, okay.
It's I don't know. I didn't look too much into the writing of this. I think this might have been a book as well.
Yeah, right. So, based on a book. I don't know if it's
maybe that's the theme. They're all books.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
We find out
kind of, but yeah.
Yeah. There's just some missed opportunities with pacing. There's also a few missed opportunities around the mystery of what causes the hunger, and things to set the story up are just not called back on and in a good way. And it's like, all right, well, why did we bother with that as well? And what's my line? It's we got to trim the fat.
Yeah.
Those type of things are fat.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you're not going to call back to it, don't bother setting it up with the characters. Let me just say, there's a healthy trigger warning here for how gory the film is. But much like the film Crimes of the Future, I would say it uses the extreme to tell an intimate story and conjures a very unique atmosphere. I wasn't a huge fan of this, but I think this lives very much in the space of where I've ranked the director before. We're going to go ahead and give Bones and All a 66.
Okay, 66. Yeah, not terrible, but, it's definitely for maybe a more targeted audience.
Yeah. I think especially, today's teen demographic can probably connect with the moodiness of this film a lot more. Almost so much so that the sadness, like I was feeling bad for the teen dates that were in the audience. I didn't know what they were in the mood for a good time.
Right. And it's weird that it takes this horror kind of play. Like you said, if it's that gory, I mean, that's for you to say that. A little trigger warning.
Yeah.
It's also kind of interesting and maybe go see it in theaters. It's in a bunch of theaters. It's only in theaters right now. It's not doing well, so it might not last too long. But if it's something that might intrigue you, go see it soon.
And honestly, I mean, as much as you and I poke fun at Timothée Chalamet,
I like him.
He's a good actor. Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely.
And he's good in this.
I absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just yes.
Yeah.
He was just the darling for a bit and getting all the roles.
Right.
But luckily, Spider-Man took his place a little bit now. He seems to be in everything. Okay, Vin. So again, that was in theaters now. It's only in theaters, unlike this next one. So this is Spirited. We have a Christmas film. This is an Apple original film, which doesn't typically bode well for us. Right. Or for Vin.
Anytime I have to go through the nightmare of canceling my subscription with them.
Okay, it's Will Ferrell. It's Ryan Reynolds. It's a take on Charles Dickens, kind of. It's rehashing the same story.
Christmas Carol,
yeah, but just differently done. How are these two? What was it like returning to this property? And I'm not going to lie, the first thing I heard about this film was that it was really good.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not going to say who said it. I'm not going to say who said it. But I was informed that it was really good and better than the adaptation or like Scrooge's that was done by Bill Murray.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Some years.
Yeah, there's countless adaptations of Christmas Carol.
Right,
so.
exactly right. What do we get here with these two? I mean, I love Ryan Reynolds, so
right. My note is podcast favorite Ryan Reynolds. Oh boy, I'm sorry, folks. I really did. I had to watch this with family too. There's a good chance they may be listening to this. I thought this film was god awful. I thought this was just an absolute pulling teeth to get through. Sean Anders, writer and director, that if you're familiar with Will Ferrell, you might be familiar with him. He did the Daddy's Home movies and a few other comedies that you'll probably recognize.
yeah, very much comedy director. He does like Horrible Bosses.
Yep, bingo.
And that's really all he does is comedies.
Yeah, and
some of those films could be all right.
Sure. No judgment on the. We are locked in for Spirited here. So, like I said, podcast favorite Ryan Reynolds to be the co-lead for the Apple TV movie. This is a full-blown Christmas musical, and while in how many episodes we're at? 60.
This is number 60, yeah.
Wow.
Congratulations, by the way, Vin.
Thanks. Well, in 60 episodes, folks, I've been pretty positive on musicals. This one I absolutely hated. This is what people warn about musicals. This is what people say, oh, I don't like musicals. This is it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I hate musicals.
Yeah, exactly. So this you will.
I hate most musicals, so I will definitely hate this.
I mean, you could
Nail in
surprise
the
me with a Tommy Two Shoes here, but I'll tell you.
I wish.
Okay.
I heard it today. I would have watched it. No, I heard the review today from somebody.
Just to surprise me, but
how was the singing of Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds?
terrible. Trash.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So bad. Let me...
I don't know why I'm surprised by that.
Yeah,
oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, just not their strong suit. You know, I mean, despite our feelings on either of the actors, I mean, I like Will Ferrell, fine. Ryan Reynolds, it's complicated.
For you, not complicated on this side of the table.
Right. But the dancing and the singing, it's just not their strong suit. Yeah. So it doesn't play into a good movie. It's I don't know. This story is yet another retelling of Christmas Carol, like we said. And this time with a kind of a modern meta quality to the jokes. Christmas Carol as a story exists within the universe. In this film, we follow kind of a Men in Black style, cheerful Christmas organization responsible for cheerful holiday turnabouts, including the original Scrooge. Ryan Reynolds' character is the latest project for the team, and he meets the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. So in that, it is very much a Christmas Carol. Will Ferrell, I would say, echoes a little bit of what made him great in like something like Elf.
Okay.
Which is a good hit. And I think Will Ferrell was a little bit more acceptable than Reynolds, but Reynolds is just really an outsider. And both of them, to the singing, to the dancing, it just is an outsider. It's just not their strong suit. And I just could not.
It's 2 hours and 7 minutes too.
God!
It's not an hour and a half Christmas film.
No, it's so drawn out. Oh man. I can safely say both are pushed into heavy musical sequences and heavy dance sequences. I mean, if I really want to be honest, I thought they were both terrible. I thought they were both terrible. Call me the Grinch, but yeah, that's what it is. There's also a disgusting amount of cheap CGI sets that are used constantly and make the whole film look like total garbage, honestly. There's a sequence where Octavia Spencer walks outside singing about the cool Manhattan air, and the city looks like the fakest thing I've ever seen.
I mean, I hate this.
Like, probably, CGI and soap operas on TV could probably do the backdrop better. It is a cheap green screen shot on a soundstage movie, and it just looks real bad. I would have rather the backgrounds be painted, Tom. I kid you not.
It almost would have added in a good way.
Yeah, or
in a weird way, yeah.
To the kind of the musical element of it, the musical theater of it.
Yeah.
I mean, man, just really did not like it.
We're going to have to do good Christmas movies.
Well... Stay tuned next week.
What a shame. What a shame.
Yeah.
Although not surprising. I mean, it's an Apple original.
Right.
I mean, at this point, Hulu's doing better with their originals.
True. I would say so. I mean, we now have the full year of 2022, and I would definitely say so. But all of that is just the start, because the music is what I hate the most about this film. I had to do research on this because I don't normally criticize music as much as I do with film. I am not a music expert, but the songs in this were just the most generic musical theater garbage that I've ever heard. The duo is Benji Pasek and Justin Paul, or Pasek and Paul is what they're referred to as kind of a songwriting duo.
Okay.
And it's a shame because they do good things. They did La La Land. They did Greatest Showman, which got Oscar nods for, or Oscar wins, I believe.
Wow.
Man, all of the music, I mean, all of it is the most...
How was the score? The score was done by Dominic Lewis.
Yeah, different.
Okay.
It's not. I'm aimed specifically at the songs. I'm aimed at the musical element of this. And it's just the most generic musical theater garbage I have heard in years. Every track is painfully plain. All of it sounds exactly the same. Believe me, I understand that aspect of everything sounding the same is a critique to Christmas music in general. But no, each song here was the same identical upbeat motif, the same exact moment where someone stops singing to say a line and speak a line out of nowhere. It's all just so bland. Oh my God. It's so bad. It's
I would hate this
so
movie.
bad. Oh man. And you know, it's just not the strong suit of these actors. The dance.
Well, Ryan Reynolds. What's the strong suit of Ryan Reynolds?
Comedy, at least.
Really? I don't think that guy has ever made me laugh on screen once.
That's why.
But anyway.
It wasn't up in the air for you. It may be up in the air for me, but yeah. You know, the dance musical numbers are just packed with dozens and dozens of backup dancers because the front line is so boring.
Yeah, you have no actual talent in this realm. Well, as far as singing, dancing, it's just not their strong.
It's just not their strong suit.
Yeah.
And like I said, disappointing for me to see Pasek and Paul. Not that I really understood their names or what project they were attached to, but seriously, you would not catch me dead listening to this on Christmas ever, ever.
Okay.
You would not catch me dead listening to this. So, Tom, it's my Christmas wish. Please don't watch this film. Okay. It is a torture that I endured even 1 second of these songs stuck in my head after watching this. And that effort cannot go to waste. Watch literally any other Christmas movie this Christmas season. We're going to go ahead and give Spirited a 29.
Woo! All right.
he's so excited.
Okay, 29%. What a way to end the episode here, Vin.
Yeah.
So stay away from Spirited. Not that anyone was clamoring for it. I mean, probably Apple money, paycheck, right? And not only that, Elf. The funny thing is Elf is probably the last true classic Christmas movie that came out.
Sure.
I don't think you can name another Christmas movie since then that has become a quote-unquote classic.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly not with the reverence of Elf or anything like that. I mean, like,
that's what I'm saying.
Elf is,
Yeah, Elf is probably the last one.
And everyone loves it.
So if you want, that's the whole point. So if you want a good Will Ferrell Christmas, go put on Elf. There's even singing at the end of it with Zooey Deschanel.
Exactly. Oh man, Tom, let me tell you though. I mean, these songs,
I would hate
these
this
songs.
movie.
It's like da-da-da-da-da, and then they always have this spoken word line, just like and maybe, and then it goes back into the song.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so annoying, and every single song is the same formula,
and it's been done.
Yeah. Oh man, I was like. Whew.
All right, so not the best Christmas musical. It's a shame because, like you said, we have a very structured December.
Yeah, we do.
So I know that White Christmas will not be on the list yet again. Yet again. But Spirited, stay away from folks with the 29%. Vin, looking at this array of films here we have, anything else you want to touch on, last comments, or we're going to roll credits here?
No, well, really the only note I have is that I'm very excited for the weeks to come. We got some good episodes lined up for December, so excited to watch the movies, but also bring to all the folks at home. Yeah,
we have some fun stuff planned, folks, especially for the end of the year. We'll do a little special and everything like that. It's just going to be a good time and pretty packed, movie packed, that's for sure. Vin, thank you so much for watching these films. Thanks for stopping by. Folks at home, we'll run it down one more time. We have Schindler's List with an 84%, Private Parts with a 72%, Till with an 80%, Bones and All with a 66%, and Spirited with a 29%. Folks, we thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you would, could you give us a good rating or tell a friend about us? If you're wondering if a film is worth the watch, or if you'd just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors, so we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.